This is how W650 Petcock looks like if you take it outside, out of the tank. Now, when I first took it out, this little filter was not there. I installed it separately. I believe they should come with two filters, one for the reserve. The smaller one is the reserve, right? So when you set it to the reserve, the fuel goes through this small hole, smaller, this hole. And when you put it to on, the fuel is taken from the top. So basically what I need to do now is I need to unscrew these two bolts and take a look inside. And we're going to replace the rubber O-rings inside there. And I'm going to also change a small O-ring in there as well. These are the O-rings that I had to buy. So these are the part numbers. This one, small one, and this one. Always use the screwdriver, Japanese industrial standard screwdriver that is supplied in your toolkit with the bike. Do not use a regular Phillips, it will strip the bolt. In general, this is applicable to all bolts on this bike. So what you do is you take this off and you will see that there is a little spring in there. Do not lose the spring. This is a very important spring and we need it back. Okay, this is how the inside looks like, right? And we need to change the O-ring. See that O-ring there? Two of them, right? Like this one and like this one on this side. So what you do is you use your screwdriver to pry up these O-rings there, right? And why am I doing this? The petcock was leaking. How do I know if it's leaking or not? And what's the problem with the leaking petcock? So what you have to do is you just basically disconnect this fuel line, and you will see that the fuel will be dripping from this hole right there, from the big one here. And it was basically like, you could see that it was leaking a little bit. It wasn't pouring out, but it was leaking. A few drops, good few drops every second. Why is it bad? The thing is that it floods the carburetor. If you turn off the bike and these drops overnight, they accumulate to a lot of fuel that basically gets into the carburetor. And especially if your float needles are bad or just kind of getting older, it will actually flood the carburetor and it will make it hard to start the bike. In my case, every time I start the bike, I need to crank it for maybe, like, press the button and hold the button for maybe 3 seconds, because the carb is usually flooded due to too much fuel in the system. That's why you have to rebuild the petcock. My bike has 55,000 kilometers at the moment. That's about close to 40,000 miles. So it's time. All right, so the new O-ring is in there. And the second O-ring, this one, I put a little bit of silicone, sprayed a little bit of silicone lube on it. It wouldn't hurt. Silicone protects rubber. And since this thing is going to be rotating on top of this, it's going to smooth up the rotation there. So silicone lube wouldn't hurt here. That's the kind of silicone spray I'm talking about. Okay, so it's all assembled. One note here on the back, just take a kerosene and wipe down all the grime from there, and basically clean that spring. You see that kind of rusty spring in there? Just clean it up. I would put a little bit of silicone spray on it as well, or a little bit of grease wouldn't hurt, because see the groove there? That's because you are using petcock, right? You're turning it off and on. to the reserve and stuff, and it scratches the metal there. So just put a little bit of grease, wouldn't hurt, or silicone spray. That's fine. Just don't put too much. I put just a tiny bit on there, and now I'm going to spread it around and assemble the tap. That's as much as you need, really, only that much. All right, put the tap back in. Do not tighten these screws too much. I literally had to hand tighten them, and then I use the screwdriver for a few more turns, and that's it. You need to keep them loose, otherwise it's going to be very hard to operate the tap. Okay, these control how hard it is the tap is going back and forth, so don't over tighten. Okay, and after that we're going to open this thing. After you unscrew these bolts here, they should be hand tight, okay, not too tight. Be careful there's a spring here, don't lose the spring. This is what's inside. You remove this diaphragm, this black part, right? This black rubber part, you see it's kind of worn already. Ideally this should be changed. So when you buy a Petcock rebuild kit, you should have this black diaphragm inside. It's a good idea to replace it. So the spring gets tired as well, so if you have a new spring in that kit, replace the spring. Spring is crucial. If the spring is tired, it will not press against the valve and it will leak. So spring is very important to change. This is how the inside looks like. See that O-ring, that black little O-ring there? That's the main vacuum valve O-ring. It needs to be replaced with a new one. Okay, goes there. Again, this black diaphragm, if you have the full official kit, which I don't, I just have the O-ring, but if you have the official rebuild kit, make sure you replace those black diaphragm as well. And inside looks reasonably clean. By the way, if you see any dirt, this is a good time to clean the Petcock inside and out. If you see any dirt, make sure you clean that dirt. After you reassemble the vacuum valve, make sure there's no dust or no dirt on this O-ring, on the black one here. Clean up everything. And don't over tighten these, hand tight, very light. Okay, and then you just place it back in. So you just carefully place it in. And these bolts here, these here bolts, 1.7 Newton meters max. Okay, I've tried to do 2 Newton meters, it's even too much. 1.7 is okay. Hand tight basically.